I'm an honest man, but if Ableton were my wife, I'd be looking at Bitwig like a thirsty snail who just ate a bunch of salt. Don't cheat on your spouse. Also, that's kind of messed up. Luckily for me, Live is a piece of software, and no feelings were harmed in the exploration of this newish DAW called Bitwig. And I mean, damn, this non-specific pronoun is fine. Did you just look at it? I know what you're thinking, Toblerone users, but hear me out before you set my channel on fire. In my opinion, DAWs are essentially limitless, but in the context of exploring, sometimes you can look in other directions if you know where your roots are bound, you know? So today I'm going to talk about a key workflow change in comparison to freezing and flattening tracks in Ableton, in which Bitwig offers hybrid tracks. I'm also going to be talking about some other workflow enhancements, like how to use the dual system of like how looping / session view works, and it's going to be pretty neat. Bouncing in place is most likely a term you've heard, but Bitwig has a few like tricks up its sleeve that's going to make this a little bit more cool. I got this idea from the WOODLER on his stream, which I will link in the description. If you guys haven't seen his live streams, it's really cool. Every once in a while, or actually pretty often, he does this like blind collab thing, and he basically has everybody bounce out loops and then basically throws them over some drums or something, and then we kind of see what we get. It's pretty neat. This is something that will be useful to you if you like to make like automated bass lines or something, or if you just want to kind of like have a collection of sounds, but also have a means to like resample and bounce everything in place to work together. So it's pretty neat. So yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with Bitwig. I am going to talk about other things regarding Bitwig, but before you yell at me, I'm not saying that like I'm switching to Bitwig 100%, but they sent me a pretty discounted copy, and I thought that I'd cover some things and whether or not you can do like, neurobasses and stuff, and all the normal things that you can do in Ableton. I'm going to talk about this again in my review, but the only thing that I found so far that Ableton cannot do, at least not that well, is if you go over here are your warp modes, so you don't have to double click, and if you hit it to raw, no pun intended, then you cannot do transposition on the raw, but there is a workaround, even though it's not quite as good. But before you like say, oh, this is like, I can't do it, just relax for a second and try the warp modes and see if they fit to your liking. You can also throw this in a sampler as well if it's that big of a deal to you. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started and talk about some cool things. So I made this bass. It's called the Sweet Spot. I did it on stream earlier today, and I had some people kind of come in. I actually lost a copy of this while I was doing tune feedback, and this is what it sounds like. We basically took that and then threw it through a portal. Nothing new, pretty standard how, all of you guys know how that goes. And we basically bounced out this huge audio chop. Here's where this comes into play. Right now, we have a MIDI synth right now or a MIDI track. But what I can do is if I find something that I like, or let's say if I want to resample this again, which I actually might just do, I can take the entire track and throw it onto this MIDI track, similar to FL Studio, and basically right-click and do another bounce if I wanted to. Now, I don't know how this is going to sound, but not too bad. So that's okay. But if I wanted to, I can right-click over here and then go into bounce in place, and I can bounce in place and bounce in place and bounce in place and bounce in place and bounce in place if I wanted to. And the neat thing about that is I don't have to freeze and flatten the track. I can also suspend these apps or whatever if I want to do that, but it's a great way to kind of get in the habit of doing a resampling chain. So that's pretty much how like the hybrid tracks work. If you're doing like a bass line or something, right? So like let's say if you've got something like this, let's say you've got a 1-bar loop and you do something hella sketch like this. Sure. Then you right click and you make it legato. And let's just drag that one out. This is a really silly, stupid bass line, but it's in A minor, so it works. All right, let's say we wanted to bounce that out, right? So we go over here, we hit the D button to go back to the device menu, and let's duplicate this, and let's go right click and bounce in place, and then boom, there we go. So if I wanted to make a copy of this, I can basically do the same thing. I can make some changes to this or turn something on and off, kind of like this. All right. Let's say that one's cool too. Again, don't judge me on my music. This isn't something I'd actually use. I'm just showing you that I can bounce in place and still continue to work, which is pretty neat. And I didn't really understand hybrid tracks until I understood that this was a possibility. But this isn't where the video ends. So check this out. If I hit L, then that brings up our session view. or a whatever you want to call it. I think it's called clip launcher. Okay. And basically session view. And what I can do is instead of having to have this on the timeline somewhere or on a chopping board, I can just go over here and throw that in. Throw that in too. I can pretty much do the same thing over here if I want to start finding some chops. So let's close this browser. I'm going to speed this part of the video up and try to find some hits and kind of just show you what I mean. Okay, so now that I have all of these little clips or whatever, I can come back over here to the original thing and I can start from bar 1 or whatever it is that I want to do. And I can kind of just take a clip and kind of throw it in and start auditioning it to see how it sounds. If I want to take a 4th bar of that, that should be fine. Kind of like that. And I can listen to this one and kind of layer this over as well. And you can kind of see how this goes. Now, I'm not expecting this to sound great or anything, and I don't have any drums over this. I suppose I could, though I don't really think that's necessary for the sake of understanding what it is that we're doing. But I can always go over here and I can create super fast and just start to kind of mess with all of these things and try to find something that fits with this part. By this part, you guys should kind of know what to do. And it's all warped in time. I can hit the bracket to double it. Actually, that's kind of cool. So and you guys can kind of just see what's going on, right? So you can tell that like all I have to do is really just find a clip that I like, and I can either throw it on the same timeline or I can leave it here. And you guys can see that this is pretty easy to get something up and going pretty quickly. Really, it's about placement, but you can tell that like because you have this audio chop thing to look at right here, that means that you don't have to like drag everything over that you like or go into a chopping board and then grab all the samples you like and then group them together and then drag them all the way over here, place them right here, start with one bar and then kind of click and drag over. You can really like refine this and get into the part that you like. And it's cool too because in most cases, like this will actually clip it for you, I believe. But in other cases, if you hit Control Shift Drag, you can still do the scrubbing on here as well. You can also double click into here and then go into this thing and then also do the same kind of scrubbing, I believe, where you have the Control Shift. There it is. And then you can scrub. Maybe that's what that is over here as well. And hit Control. There you go. Control and Shift, and then you can see that you can scrub. So you can kind of move everything over where you want it to be. If you get over here and you're just doing things for placement, maybe you don't actually like the sounds that you're getting, you can do the same thing as well. Let's duplicate this, listen to it. All right, so maybe that's not my favorite, but I can hit Control and then start to scrub this over and just find something different that I may or may not like, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's a really powerful tool, and that's something that I'm really excited for Bitwig for. Although you can't freeze tracks, it's not to say that there's not kind of something that Bitwig offers. And this is, I think, more akin to things like Cubase and all that as well. But I want you to be aware of that workflow if you're getting into Bitwig and considering switching from Ableton. And in the future, I most likely will be doing video comparisons to Ableton since I've spent so much time in it. Do I think that Bitwig is better? Yes and no. We will talk about that in future videos. But yeah, I hope that you guys like this little workflow ideology thing. It's pretty cool, and it's something that I'm really looking forward to sharing with you all. And also thank you, Bitwig, for letting me explore your program a little bit and have something to export. So yeah, I'll definitely throw this up on Patreon for you guys. The, I guess, long cut anyways. It's not too long, but there's a bunch of rhythmic stuff over at the 124 BPM, and you guys can kind of go in there and fish out for yourself, which will definitely be Ableton compatible. But yeah, thank you guys for watching this video. I hope that it was enjoyable to you, and I hope that some of the stigma about Bitwig being super weak is going to kind of lighten up now that I have something to do with it. Is it the best DAW ever? I don't know, but it's definitely fun and worth exploring, especially if you come from Ableton and are looking for something new. Thank you guys for watching my content. Be sure to check out all my social media with my Twitch, my Patreon, and other means, and I hope that you all have a wonderful day. Happy producing.